Hello, viewers of the future. Sorry there wasn't any recordings the last 2 nights. My sister was over, and I have not gone to the point where I have extras, so I didn't record because she was over, and as such, there was no recording the last 2 nights. Sorry about that. Should get better at it now. My sister isn't expected to return back home for a little while, so the days that I need to record, I should start recording enough extra. Anyways, today we're going to continue with more Color of Magic. Last time we were reading, also we're like almost halfway through the book. Ooh. I know what I'm reading next, so don't worry about that. But so last time when we were reading, Rincewind was captured by a dryad, and Twoflower was heading towards the Soul Eater, Bel Shamharoth. And so, yeah, bad things for Twoflower, not for Rincewind. Rincewind's captured by a dryad. That's not going to be that bad, right? Alright. I was going to say something, then I coughed a lot. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's start up after I get my things to start. Boop. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, he also got the book spell stuck in his head. Okay. I'm gonna read that paragraph first. He had gingerly opened the book, which was changed to the octaron pedestal in the middle of the ruin-strewn floor, not lest someone steal it, but lest it escaped, for it was the octave, so full of magic that it had its own vague sentience. One spell had indeed leapt from the crackling pages and lodged itself in the dark recesses of his mind, and apart from knowing that it was one of the great 8 spells, no one would know which one until he said it. Even Rincewind did not, but he could feel it sometimes, sliding out of his sight sidling out behind his ego, biding its time. On the front of the octave had been a representation of Bel Shamharoth. He was not evil, for even evil had a certain vitality. Bel Shamharoth was the flip side of the coin, of which good and evil are but one side. The Soul Eater. His number lieth between 7 and 9. It is twice 4, Rincewind quoted. His mind froze with fear. Oh no, where's the temple? Hubward, towards the center of the forest, said the dryad. It is very old. But who would be so stupid as to worship him? I mean, devils, yes, but he's the Soul Eater. There were certain advantages, and the race that used to live in these parts had a strange notion. What happened to them, then? I did say they used to live in these parts. The dryad stood up and stretched out her hand. Come, I am Dula? Come with me and watch your friend's fate. It should be interesting. I'm not sure that, began Rincewind. The dryad turned her green eyes on him. Do you believe you have a choice? She asked. A staircase broad as a mighty hallway wound up through the trees, with vast rooms leading off at every landing. The sourceless yellow light was everywhere. There was also a sound like Rincewind concentrated, trying to identify it, like far-off thunder or a distant waterfall. It's the tree, said the dryad shortly. What's it doing? Said Rincewind. Living. I wondered about that. I mean, are we really in a tree? Have I been reduced inside? From outside it looks narrow enough for me to put my arms around. It is. But here I am inside it? You are. Said Rincewind. Durella laughed. I hope I'm saying that right. It's Druellae. I can see into your mind, false wizard. Am I not a dryad? Do you not know that what you belittled by the name tree is but the mere 4th dimension analog of a whole multi-dimensional universe which, no, I can see you do not. I should have realized that you weren't a real wizard when I saw you didn't have a staff. Lost it in the fire, Rincewind lied automatically. No hat with magical sigils embroidered on it. It blew off. No familiar? No familiar? It died. Look, thanks for rescuing me, but if you don't mind, I think I ought to be going. If you could show me the way out. Something in her expression made him turn around. There were 3 he-dryads behind him. They were as naked as the woman, and unarmed. That last fact was irrelevant, however. They didn't look as though they would need a weapon to fight Rincewind. They looked as though they could shoulder their way through solid rock and beat up a regiment of trolls into the bargain. What? They looked as though they could shoulder their way through solid rock and beat up a regiment of trolls into the bargain. Okay. The 3 handsome giants looked down at him with a wooden menace. Their skins were the color of walnut husks, and under its muscles bulged like sacks of melons. He turned around again and grinned weakly at Drulia. Durilla. Life was beginning to take on a familiar shape again. I'm not rescued, am I? He said. I'm captured, right? Of course. And you're not letting me go? It was a statement. Durella shook her head. You hurt the tree, but you are lucky. Your friend is going to meet Shamharoth. You will only die. From behind, 2 hands gripped his shoulders in much the same way that an old tree root coils relentlessly around a pebble. With a certain amount of ceremony, of course, the Dryad went on, after the sender of 8 has finished with your friend. All Rincewind could manage to say was, you know, I never imagined there would be he-dryads, not even in an oak tree. One of the giants grinned at him. Durella snorted. Stupid! Where do you think acorns come from? There was a vast empty space like a hall, its roof lost in the golden haze. The endless stairs ran right up through it. Several hundred dryads were clustered at the other end of the hall. They parted respectfully when I'm having a problem with this. No, that's not it. Druelle approached and stared through Rincewind as he was propelled firmly behind. Yeah. Most of them were female, although there were a few of the giant men among them. They stood like god-shaped statues among the small, intelligent females. Insects, thought Rincewind. The tree is like a hive. But why were there dryads at all? As far as he could recall, the tree people had died out centuries before. They had been out-evolved by humans, like most of the other Twilight people. Only elves and trolls had survived the coming of man to the Discworld. The elves became altogether too clever. The elves became because they were altogether too clever by half, and the trollin folks. Hold on, my hair. There you go. Because they were at least as good as humans at being nasty, sinful, spiteful, and greedy. Dryads were supposed to have died out, along with gnomes and pixies. The background roar was louder here. Sometimes a pulsing golden glow would race up the translucent walls until it was lost in the haze overhead. Some power in the air made it vibrate. Oh, incompetent wizard, said Druel. See some magic. Not your weasel-faced tame magic, but root and branch magic, the old magic, wild magic. Watch. 50 or so of the females formed a tight cluster, joined hands and walked backwards until they formed the circumference of a large circle. The rest of the dryads began a low chant. Then, at a nod from Druel, the circle began to spin windershins. Yeah. As the pace began to quicken, and then the complicated threads of the chant began to rise, Rincewind found himself watching, fascinated. He had heard about the old magic at a university, although it was forbidden to wizards. He knew that when the circle was spinning fast enough against the standing magical fields of the Discworld itself in its slow turning, the resulting astral friction would build up a vast potental difference which would earth itself by a vast discharge of the elemental magical force. He's trying to explain magic, and it's working, but it's also a lot of words. Long, long, big words. I'm sorry, my neck is really itchy. Okay. The circle was a blur now, and the walls of the tree rang with the echoes of the chant. Rincewind felt the familiar sticky pricklings in the scalp that indicated the build-up of heavy charge of raw enchantment in the vicinity, and so he was not utterly amazed when, a few seconds later, a shaft of vivid octarine light speared down into the invisible ceiling from the invisible ceiling and focused, crackling, in the center of the circle. There it formed an image of a stormy swept, tree-girt hill with a temple on its crest. In its shape did unpleasant things to the eye. Rincewind knew that if it was a temple of Bel Shamharath, it would have 8 sides. 8 was also the number of Bel Shamharath, which was why a sensible wizard would never mention the number if he could avoid it. Or you'll be 8 alive. Apprentices were joyously warned. Bel Shamharath was especially attracted to dabblers in magic who, by being as it were becomers on the shores of the unnatural, were already half enmeshed in his net. Rincewind's room number in his hall of residence had been 7A. He hadn't been surprised. Rain steamed off the black walls of the temple. The only sign of life was the horse tethered outside, and it wasn't Twoflower's horse. For one thing, it was too big. It was a white charger with hooves the size of meat dishes and leather harness aglitter with Austrian gold ornaments. It was currently enjoying a nosebag. There was something familiar about it. Rincewind tried to remember where he had seen it before. It looked as though it was capable of a fair turn of speed, anyways, a speed which, once it had lumbered up to it, it could maintain for a long time. All Rincewind had to do was shake off his guards, fight his way out of the tree, find the temple, and steal the horse out from under whoever it was that Bel Shamharath used for a nose. Steal the horse out from under who... Oh, okay. Sorry, I read that. Find the temple and steal the horse out from under whatever it was that Bel Shamharath used for nose. Okay. The sender of 8 has 2 for dinner, it seems, said Dorella, looking hard at Rincewind. Who does that steed belong to, false wizard? I have no idea. No? Well, it does not matter. We shall see soon enough. She waved a hand. The focus of the image moved inward, darting through a great octagonal archway and sped along the corridor within. There was a figure there, sliding along stealthily with his back against one wall. Rincewind saw the gleam of gold and bronze. There was no mistaking that shape. He'd seen it many times. The wide chest, the neck like a tree trunk, the surprisingly small head under its wide thatch of black hair, looking like a tomato on a coffin. He could put a name to the creeping figure, and that name was Herne the Barbarian. Herne was one of the Circle C's most durable heroes, a fighter of dragons, a despoiler of temples, a hired sword, the king post of every street brawl. He could even, and unlike many heroes of Rincewind's acquaintance, speak words of more than 2 syllables, if given time and maybe a hint or two. There was a sound on the edge of Rincewind's hearing. It sounded like several skulls bouncing down the steps of some distant dungeon. He looked sideways at his guard to see if they had heard it. They had all their limited attention focused on Herne, who was admittingly built on the same lines as themselves. Their hands were resting lightly on the wizard's shoulders. Rincewind ducked, jerked backwards like a tumbler, and came up running. Behind him he heard Dorella shout, and he redoubled his speed. Something caught the hood of his robe, which tore off. A he-dryad, waiting at the stairs, spread his arms wide and grinned woodenly at the figure hurrying towards him. Without breaking his stride, Rincewind ducked again, so low that his chin was on level with his knees, while a fist like a log sizzled through the air by his ear. Ahead of him, a whole Ahead of him, a whole spinning of the tree man await. He spun around, dodged another blow from the puzzled guard, and sped back towards the circle, passing on the way the dryad who were pursuing him, and leaving them as disorganized as a set of skittles. But there was still more in front, pushing their way through the crowd of females and smacking their fists into the horny palms of their hands with anticipated concentration. "Stand still, false wizard," said Dorella, stepping forward. Behind her the enchanted dancers spun on. The focus of the circle was now shifting along a violet-lit corridor. Rincewind cracked. "Will you knock that off?" he snarled. "Let's just get this straight, right? I am a real wizard." He stamped a foot patronally. "Indeed," said the dryad. "Then let us see you pass a spell." Began Rincewind. The fact was that, since the ancient and mysterious spell had squatted in his mind, he had been unable to remember even the simplest cantrip for, say, killing cockroaches or scratching the small of his back without using his hands. The mages at Unseen University had tried to explain this by suggesting that the involuntary memorization of the spell had, as it were, tied up all his spell-retaining cells. In his darker moments, Rincewind had come up with his own explanation as to why even minor spells refused to stay in his head for more than a few seconds. They were scared, he decided. He repeated. "A small one would do," said Dorella, watching him curl his lips in a frenzy of anger and embarrassment. She signaled, and a couple of he-dryads closed in. The spell chose that moment to vault into the temporarily abandoned saddle of Rincewind's consciousness. He felt it sitting there, leering defiantly at him. "I do know a spell," he said warily. "Yes? Pray tell," said Dorella. Rincewind wasn't sure that he dared, although the spell was trying to take control of his tongue. He fought it. You said you could read my mind." He said instinctively. "Read it." She stepped forward, looking mockingly into his eyes. Her smile froze. Her hands rose protectively. She crouched back. From her throat came a sound of pure terror. Rincewind looked around. The rest of the dryads were also backing away. What had he done? Something horrible, apparently, or something terrible, apparently. But in his experience, it was only a matter of time before the normal balance of the universe restored itself and started doing the usual terrible thing to him. He backed away, ducked between the still spinning dryads who were creating the magic circle, and watched to see what Dorella would do next. "Grab him!" she screamed. "Take him a long way from the tree and kill him!" Rincewind turned and bolted. Across the force of the circle, there was a brilliant flash, there was sudden darkness, there was a vaguely Rincewind-shaped violet shadow dwelling to a point and There was turned and bolted. Across the force of the circle, there was a brilliant flash, there was a sudden darkness, there was a vaguely Rincewind-shaped violet shadow dwindling to a point and winking out. There was nothing at all. Her and the barbarian crept soundlessly along the corridors, which were lit with a light so violet that it was almost black. His earlier confusion was gone. This was obviously a magic temple, and that explained everything. It explained why, earlier in the afternoon, he had espied a chest by the side of the track while riding through this benighted forest. Its top was invitingly open, displaying much gold, but when he had leapt off his horse to approach it, the chest had sprouted legs and had gone trotting off into the forest, stopping again a few hundred yards away. Oh, the luggage was leading him this way, all right. Now, after several hours of teasing pursuit, he had lost it in these hell-lit tunnels. On the whole, the unpleasant carvings and occasional disjointed skeletons he'd passed held no fear for Hearn. This was partially because he was not expectingly bright, while being at the same time exceptionally unimaginative. But it was also because old carvings and perilous tunnels were all in a day's work. He spent a great deal of time in similar situations, seeking gold or demons or distressed virgins, and relieving them respectively of their owners, their lives, and at least one cause of their distress. Observe Hearn, as he leapt cat-footed across the suspicious tunnel mouth. Even in the violet light his skin gleamed coppery. There is much gold about his person, in the form of anklets and wristlets, but otherwise he is naked except for a leopard-skin loincloth. He took that in the steaming forests of Halwendale land, after killing its owner with his teeth. In his right hand he carried the magical black sword Kring, which was forged from a thunderbolt, and had a soul but suffered no scabbard. Herne had stolen it only 3 days before from the impenetrable palace of the Archimagird of Bituini. B-I-T-U-N-I. And he was already regretting it. It was beginning to get on his nerves. This is supposed to be a ringing sound. I tell you, it went down that last passage on the right, hissed Cringe in a voice like the scrapes of blade over stone. Be silent. All I said was, shut up. And Twoflower? He was lost. He knew that. Either the building was much bigger than it looked, or he was now on some wide underground level without having gone down any steps. Or, as he was beginning to suspect, the inner dimensions of the place disobeyed a fairly basic rule of architecture by being bigger than the outside. And why all the strange lights? There were 8-sided crystals set at regular intervals in the wall and ceiling, and they shed a rather unpleasant glow that didn't so much illuminate as outline the darkness. So now we are actually entering Bel-Shemharoth's temple, and we get to see how that goes soon. Tomorrow, pretty much. Exciting. So, that has been Color Magic. I have been Endragh. I hope I brought a smile to your face, and I will see you tomorrow night for more reading, I promise. I'm recording that right after this. Anyways, night-night, guys.